At the first Republican primary debate, Vivek Ramaswamy asserted that he was the only candidate up on that stage that is not influenced by corporate money, okay? He is not bought and paid for. But there's a great new report by The Lever that indicates that contrary to what Ramaswamy would have you believe, he does in fact have some pretty close connections with several dark money organizations, and he actually used those connections to further his business and political interests. So Ramaswamy is well known for his work in the biotech industry. That is where he made his money. That is why he is wealthy. But back in 2022, he started another business with funding from Peter Thiel and Senator J.D. Vance's venture capital firm. Okay, that business was an asset management company called Strive. Okay, so Strive was branded as an anti-woke alternative to asset managers like BlackRock. Like BlackRock was. We all know that BlackRock is well known for their social justice stances. You know, they love to buy up entire neighborhoods and price people out of their own, neighborhoods. That's the kind of social justice BlackRock is known for. Aside from, maybe addressing some of the issues in the country with like some shallow statements, BlackRock is not woke at all in any way. But nonetheless, let's watch Ramaswamy explain the premise of the company in an interview that he did just last year on CNBC.
It's kind of the anti-ESG you're launching, is it not?
Well, I find it difficult to be anti-ESG when I find it very difficult to even define what ESG means today. But here's actually what we do stand for, is a message to corporate America to focus on excellence over politics. If you're an oil company, be an excellent oil company. If you're a coal company, be an excellent coal company. And if you're a solar company, be an excellent solar company. But we're not going to tell, for example, oil companies not to be oil companies. And Joe, this relates to, I think, what I call a fiduciary issue with the top asset managers in the world. And what I think is happening today is a problem where the biggest asset managers on the planet, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, I think they're using their clients' capital to advocate for viewpoints in the boardrooms of corporate America that most of their own clients disagree with.
So in order to launch Strive, he obviously needed some funding. And specifically, Ramaswamy is close with something known as the State Financial Officers Foundation, SFOF. SFOF is linked to none other than conservative mega donor Leonard Leo. State Financial Officers Foundation bestowed Ramaswamy its Lifetime Achievement Award in 2022, the year he launched Strive. And Ramaswamy has delivered speeches to the organization and other conservative groups that have worked with SFOF on financial issues in recent years. Further, Ramaswamy also sits on the board of the Leonard Leo-backed Philanthropy Roundtable and is a member of two Leo-backed groups, the Young Conservative Network, Teneo, and the Conservative Lawyers Network, the Federalist Society. So Ramaswamy's connections specifically to this organization appear to be rather instrumental in the success of Strive. So last spring and summer, Ramaswamy or Strive executives contacted financial officers in at least 12 states to pitch Strive's exchange-traded funds, bundles of securities such as stocks and bonds that are traded on exchanges, and in some cases, its advisory services. In all 12 of those states, the top financial officer was a member of the dark money nonprofit SFOF. And here's one specific instance of how the company has actually leveraged or used its leverage for political and financial gain. So in August of 2022, as The Lever writes, Strive co-founder Anson Frerichs launched or had lunch in Austin, Texas, with a fossil fuel billionaire and Texas Comptroller Glenn Hegar, a member of SFOF. Weeks earlier, Hegar had introduced Ramaswamy for a talk he was giving on Woke Inc. Woke Inc. is his book. The following month, Hegar obliged when Frerichs requested a warm introduction to Texas officials overseeing an emerging managers fund. Records show the Texas employees' retirement fund had invested $100 million in Strive's anti-China exchange traded fund. So that anecdote, by the way, helps to explain why Ramaswamy was, I believe, the only Republican on the debate stage who referred to climate change as a hoax. And by the way, I want to give voters in the Republican Party, at least some of them, some credit, because I am noticing a split within Republican voters where many of them are now not only acknowledging climate change, but also acknowledging the severity of it, acknowledging that it's man-made, and they're looking for solutions, right? That's not to say that all Republican voters fall in line on that or agree with that, but I am noticing a pretty significant disconnect between the politicians and the voters, which is why I think for the first time you have a debate stage consisting of Republican, politicians getting asked about their plans to address climate change. But again, Ramaswamy was the only one on that stage who literally referred to it as a hoax. And Strive is now facing 2 separate lawsuits from ex-employees of the company who allege that Ramaswamy and Frericks pushed employees to violate securities law, and they also allegedly mistreated staff. The lawyer representing one of those employees has stated the following: Strive was founded in retrospect largely as a PR mechanism for the presidential campaign of Ramaswamy. Not a lot of thought was given to running it as an investment firm. And as of June, the company had over $750 million under its management. So Woz, this is a little bit different from, let's say, moneyed interests funding a campaign. As far as we know so far, Ramaswamy is self-funded. He donated more than $10 million to his own campaign in the first quarter of this year. But I am curious what you think about this, because he's still very much in the swamp. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an interesting way that he got himself into this presidential race, in the sense that here's a rich guy who probably thinks to himself, yo, I should run for president one day. How do I get my name out there? And he notices that this quote unquote woke discourse is, essentially one of the hot button issues in our political life, unfortunately. And he finds a way to shoehorn himself into that conversation. And then, because he's rich as hell, unsurprisingly, he's able to form some political connections. And boom, there you have it. Rich guy uses his resources to make political connections. Also is savvy enough to just know, like if you watch Fox News or if you read any, conservative media outlet on the internet, you know exactly what's sort of moving the needle conversationally. And he went about making himself a figure in that conversation. I think what's interesting, man, is all of these art capitalist types, man, and the idea that it's like, oh, we want to manage public pension funds. These people and their derision of publicly funded anything when it's not their own pockets, it's hilarious. It's just the idea that this guy should be managing the pensions of government workers in red states. That sort of raises my eyebrow, and it's just the hypocrisy of it is just amazing to me. But yeah, I'm not surprised that this guy used his resources to peddle influence in political circles, and that gained him entrance.
Exactly. And so when he's on that debate stage and he points fingers, look, rightly, to all the other candidates who are taking money from corporate interests, he tries to provide this this message to voters that oh, I'm above it, right? Like I'm not at all, my ideology, what I would do as president would not be tainted by the desires of these corporate interests. But he's very much enmeshed in that system, considering how he made his wealth, considering who he's gotten funding from his previous business ventures. And by the way, Ramaswamy has technically resigned from Strive, but there is a catch to that, and it's the same catch that we experienced during the Trump administration. Ramaswamy retains a stake estimated at 40% of the firm, worth $120 million. His recent personal financial disclosure values his stake in Strive Enterprises at more than $50 million and lists additional Strive holdings worth up to $55 million. So yeah, I mean, look, I don't think that Ramaswamy attempting to be Trump light is going to work out for him. Let's say that the Republican primary ends up being between Ramaswamy and Donald Trump. Why would anyone in the Republican Party end up voting for Ramaswamy, who's like a wannabe Trump, when they could just vote for Trump? I think that's what's likely gonna happen. But it's still super early in the primaries. We'll see how this all plays out. I just think there's just something particularly slimy about Ramaswamy. And I think this is a good example of that, right? To pretend like you're above the money in politics when you're very much swimming in that swamp and have been for a while.
Well, if we could change the metaphor a bit, right? Just the idea that these politicians are prostituting themselves for money from rich guys. Well, in that scenario, Anna, Ramaswamy is the John. Like, you're not above this. Totally. In that scenario. You're the guy paying for the services of these guys. And I think that's why they had so much contempt for him during that debate. It's like, who does this guy think he is? The idea that he's somehow completely clean of this process is nuts, disingenuous, and ridiculous.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.